All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wales Cancer Research Centre's the next 5 years. We've got a wonderful program for you this morning. Just want to check everyone is in, everyone's good, everyone can hear me okay, all the text going well. Give me a holler if anything in the wonderful world of technology goes awry today. We've done a little training session this morning. Everything seems to be going perfectly fine. But as we know, the gremlins inside all our technology loves to trip us up. So we shall do our best for you this morning. So today's program runs till about 12:30. I know you'd like it to go longer, but that's all we can fit in for today. And my name's Hugh James. I'll be your host for today. My background's actually in science communications. I'm a science presenter. So I communicate science with the public. A big part of Wales Cancer Research Centre is also doing the same, communicating what they do with the public too. So we're going to look at today a few different things. We've got some wonderful speakers. As you know, the Wales Cancer Research Centre is a comprehensive cancer research centre and a really vital part of care research in Wales. Today we've got, let me pull this up for you, a wonderful programme with some great speakers in it, who I'll introduce in a second. We've got, at 10:10, we've got Professor John Chester, And then at between 10 and 11 o'clock, we've got Dr. Sunil Dalwani, Professor John Stafford, Professor Duncan Baird, and Julie Hepburn. We've got, I'll do a little bit of talk about what the WCRC can do for you. We do have breaks built in, so don't feel the need to rush off during talks, unless you really need to, obviously. Get your coffee ready. I'm prepared for at least the next hour with my pot of coffee. So that'll see me through right until about 11 o'clock. Then we've got a lovely panel discussion then as well. There'll be a chance for you to ask your questions to the panel, and we've got a great way to do that to make sure that everyone gets their questions seen, and then the panel will discuss them. And then we've got a cancer research strategy for Wales update 2, and then I'll summarize and close. So hopefully there'll be enough time in the next 2.5 hours for everyone to have a little bit of a say, to ask what they want of our panel, and for some of the speakers to talk about what they've been doing and the last 5 years in Wales Cancer Research Centre. If you want to talk about today on social media, feel free to. You can talk about how good the speakers are, how wonderful Welsh Cancer Research Centre is. The hashtag is WCRC 5 years. Hashtag WCRC 5 years. And if you want to tag the Wales Cancer Research Centre in that, it's at the WCRC. There we go. So hashtag WCRC 5 years. Okay. And then when it comes to asking questions, when it comes to feedback, all that kind of stuff, we've got a wonderful program for you too. It's called Mentimeter. And what I'll ask you to do first is pick a device that you're not currently watching this on, and go to www.menti.com, MENTI.com. You should see at the top of your screen now. It says menti.com. And then it'll ask you for a code. That code that you want to put in is 8767157. 8767157. Feel like I'm on Children in Need. Give what you can to 8767157. Menti.com. That'll stay on the screen throughout all of this. So when I head to the next slide, you'll still see at the top of the screen. So don't worry if you haven't logged in just yet. But what I really want to know is tell us who you are, where you're from. We've got a wonderful bunch of attendees. I can't actually see currently how many there are, but there are over 40 when I looked just now. Tell us who you are, where you are. Very local radio. Tell us what you're doing. You're driving to work, watching the kids, clinical researcher. Fantastic. And you'll see that they'll pop up like this through the entire thing. And we can download these as well and see, what type of people are attending these conferences. But yeah, tell us where you are as well. Where in Wales you're attending from. I'm currently in the wonderful Caerphilly. I'm at Welsh Ice in my studio. I've got a little studio here. We're trying not to travel too far at the moment, but I don't get to come into Cardiff as much as I would like to. Professional virus trainer. Where have you been for the last 6 months? Can we have you doing some work, please? Research comes in Cardiff. Fantastic. Hi, Karen. From Wales Gene Park. Done some wonderful hosting for Wales Gene Park at some of their events they have for sixth formers, which always go down really, really well. In fact, the last one I did, we had their hashtag trending in the UK for that one, which was wonderful. But sixth formers say some weird things, so wasn't always great. Perfect. You can keep that coming in for a little bit. And hi Andrew. Kevin Ashfield from Wales Gene Park. A lot of Wales Gene Park coming in. Nurses, researchers. Here we go. UK specialist nurse. Wonderful. Hi to everyone who's joining us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, to get you kind of in the feel of this is how it works when it's open-ended on Mentimeter. But let's have a look when it's questions. Thank you everyone for taking part. So when it's questions, it'll look a bit more like this. So I just want to do a little bit of a quiz to get you in the feel of Mentimeter to make sure that you're happy with what you're doing. So the question is, who won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the development of a method for genome editing. Which one of those? So I've got the ability to turn the submissions off. So unlike the last one where it just pops up as you send it in, this one won't pop up until I hit show the answers or show the results, and then I can show the correct answer then as well. So who won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the development of a method for genome editing? I imagine your answers are in. Let's show the results. There we go. Look at this. What a wonderful day that was for the CRISPR team to show their awesome work. Majority got that right. Perfect. Okay, how old is the oldest known tumor? This is a scientific question, not a political question. How old is the oldest known tumor? 5,400 years, 76 million years, 250 years, or 50 years? Get your answers in now. Down the bottom right, you can see how many people have voted so far. 22, 23 have got their answers in. 27, look at this. And let's see what your results are. Perfect. A lot of you know your dinosaurs. This is actually a fairly recent bit of research, I think. Collaboration led by Royal Ontario Museum and McMaster University. Has led to the discovery of a diagnosis of an aggressive malignant bone cancer for the first time ever in a dinosaur. So 76 million years is the correct answer. Oldest known tumor, apparently. Okay, last one. Which gene do elephants have multiple copies of, which may be related to their cancer resistance? Is it TERT, trunk, TP53, or BRCA1? Obviously, the answer is trunk, because why would you name any other animal with a genome called trunk? Let's find out which one of those it is. With 20 respondents so far, I'll show the results, and you are correct. It is TP53. Although I was surprised to find out that trunk is actually, I think, a fruit fly genome, apparently. Okay, so before we head back, let us know, what does the future look like for Welsh cancer research? What's the type of things you'd want to see? What's the type of, do you think that it'll just be great for the next while? What does the future look like for Welsh cancer research? More collaboration is I don't think you can ever have less collaboration, though a lot of companies I work with at the moment, when I ask a question, it goes to around about 7 different people before I get an answer. So maybe sometimes you have too much collaboration, but I agree in this instance, in science, more collaboration is always better. A lot of people are saying challenging. Yeah, I mean, if 2020 is anything to go by, probably integrated, fewer silos. Yeah, difficult with the current funding climate. We've talked about a lot of these things coming up. Exciting, dynamic, and stronger. I love your optimism. That's the coffee talking. I'm sure. Funding challenges, for sure. Data-driven is always something that we're looking for. Let's try and use that data in Excel if you need to, or other better ways maybe. So brilliant. I can download these and send it across to the WCRC team, and make sure that we include your views in the next 5 years. Perfect. In fact, I'll leave that up so you can scroll away if you need to, whilst I head back to myself and talk about some of the highlights over the last 5 years. It's not healthy to always look backwards, but you learn from what you've done to what you're going to do in the future. So here's some of the highlights that have happened over the last 5 years for Wales Cancer Research Centre. Bringing lots to the economy, creating lots of additional posts, lots of funding generated, some great publications. In fact, I worked out that's 0.27 papers per day, which, well done team. I don't get a lot done in a day, but a third of a paper is fantastic. Awesome public engagement and involvement. Over 10,000 members of the public at the events, which that's mainly what I do, is that public participation, public engagement. So I know how difficult that can be. So kudos to the team there. some great clinical trials and biobanking as well. 10,000 plus samples issued to researchers, 10 radiotherapy trials currently open in Wales, thanks to WCRC. A whole slew of wonderful highlights that they've been managed to do just in 5 years, because Wales Cancer Research Centre was founded in 2015. So it's all been built from scratch by working with researchers and other partner organizations. Amazing work. We'll hear a little bit about MDRGs, multidisciplinary research groups, Europe leading public and patient involvement, more collaboration with Europe, please, and loads of good stuff. So we're going to head straight into our first talk now, looking forwards, ambitions for the next 5 years with Professor John Chester. I was lucky enough to hear a little bit about each one of these speakers today earlier on, and I'm super excited to hear what each one of them has to say. Each one of them has about 8 or 9 minutes, and we're going to have a question after most of these as well. So we'll head back to Mentimeter afterwards, after our presentations. But for now, I'll head over to Professor John Chester and for a 10-minute talk. Thanks, John.
Thank you for getting us off to such a great start, and thank you all for joining us. It's been wonderful since about 10 to 10, watching the numbers clicking up and the numbers of participants down at the bottom of the screen there. Absolutely fantastic that so many people have chosen to join us. Hugh had the impossible job just now of trying to summarize 5 years of hard work on behalf of so many people, and it's going to be equally difficult for me to try and summarize the next 5 years. But what I'd like to do is just take you through some of the highlights of our plans for the coming time, and that will hopefully set up my fellow experts for their talks, which will follow mine. So before I get going, it stands to reason that we are meeting in a way we wouldn't normally do and one we wouldn't choose to do. COVID is upon us. It's a horrible thing in many ways. The figures down in the bottom left corner only tell a part of it. Each of those 57,000 plus deaths is a personal tragedy. And on top of the deaths, there's been lots of misery, both personal, social and economic. On the other hand, there are positives around the place. Lots of people I've spoken to talk about silver linings within the big black cloud of COVID. And one of those silver linings, of course, has been the magnificent work carried out by the NHS and other carers. I had hoped that we could have a sort of electronic clapping of hands, because when I usually use Zoom, it gives an option to have reactions and clap hands, but I can't find it on my screen this morning. But if people want to clap, do please feel free. The slide I've just put up there is some key contributors to our first 5 years who've moved on to other things for various reasons. In some cases, such as Owen and Joe, to promotions, to others a little bit less WCRC driven angst, but thank you to all of them, and I'll try and give credit through my talk to those who've helped, but apologies that I haven't got time to name individuals. So things that will not change in the coming 5 years are our vision and values. As it says here, our vision is exactly the same as it was between 2015 and 2020, to work with cancer patients and other partners to develop and deliver research excellence which benefits the health and welfare of people in Wales and beyond. It's simple words, aren't they? But lots of things are important there. We've got to focus on patients. We must work with partners. We need to focus on research excellence, giving the people of Wales the very best we can, and not just in terms of health, but also things beyond that, including economic benefits. And we don't want to just think of people in Wales, we want to think of those beyond as well. We want to play our part as citizens in the global effort against cancer. Our values are listed there, again, words that sound simple, but are really important things. Excellence, partnership. Partnership will keep cropping up in what I say. I'm sure we need to be inclusive. Sustainability. We don't just want the WCRC to go from 2015 to 2025. We want cancer research in Wales to thrive well beyond that. And a favourite phrase of mine, outward looking and forward thinking. We need to be thinking ahead to what the future needs of our patients and community are going to be, and we need to look outwards to work with the best people doing similar things elsewhere. We see ourselves very much as a bridge between what goes on in laboratories and other research establishments in academia and the crucial work that's done in NHS, where they deliver the research. So we see ourselves very much as developing research to make available to patients and the community. This is how we were in the first 5 years, funded by Welsh Government through Health and Care Research Wales to bring together the very best of cancer research in the NHS and in the universities around Wales. We had this 4-theme structure based around a translational pipeline. We have adapted that for the coming few years. We've taken that pipeline that you can see at the top, and we've tried to focus instead on a patient journey, all the way from people who don't have cancer but maybe at risk of developing cancer, all the way through to those who've gone through detection, screening, treatment, and other supportive care approaches to either survive their cancer or to grapple with the end-of-life issues that it sometimes brings. At the same time as changing that, that sort of flow of research, we've chosen to reduce to 2 main domains of activity: prevention and diagnosis, aiming at developing novel diagnostics; treatment and care, aiming to develop advanced therapeutics. Within those 2 domains, we have 2 work streams, as we call them. In the prevention and diagnosis, we have personalised prevention and enhanced diagnosis. And in the treatment and care, we have improving patient outcomes, but also importantly, improving patient experience. It's not just about delivering cures and better care, it's also about making sure that we minimise toxicities and think of other important aspects of patients' lives. All of those activities are supported by 3 crucial things: patient and public involvement, for which we have a deservedly strong reputation. Cancer biobanking, our links with the Wales Cancer Bank have been good in the past and will continue to be excellent in the future, I'm sure. And a phrase that I think will probably crop up in other talks, and I think I saw Kevin Ashelford, when he came on earlier, mentioning data integration being something he's keen on, and that's going to be a big theme for the future, I think. Finally, we have a wonderful coordinating office, lots of changes going on there as well, which I'll mention in a moment or two, but we'd struggle to do all the good things we do without our wonderful hub office. So what's new in the coming 5 years? Well, the first thing I should mention, I've touched on already really, is Wales Cancer Bank. Cancer research in Wales goes back a long way with Wales Cancer Bank. Forgive me, that's the perfect time, isn't it, for the phone to ring in the background. I hope that my daughter's going to leap and take it off the hook before it can drive everybody mad. Another aspect of COVID that we're not used to, isn't it? So Wales Cancer Bank has been a long-standing partner of cancer researchers across Wales. It was part of WCRC in the first quinquennium. It's now had its independence restored rightfully, and I think that's a very healthy sign, but we will continue to work with them without question. Another new aspect for the coming 5 years is an increasing emphasis on prevention, screening and early diagnosis. These things, in my view, are absolutely crucial. It's all very well treating cancers successfully and better than ever, but we also want to stop them occurring in the first place, or if we can't stop them, bring them up short as quickly as we can while they're still curable. The other thing that will be mentioned later on is a novel approach to dealing with the quality of life for patients, what's called the SMART MDT, a whole new way of looking at things from a patient's perspective while still doing the same good things we've been doing all along. Multidisciplinary research groups have been a big success over the last few years for us, bringing together the best clinical and non-clinical researchers around the main cancer groups, but we're adding on emerging strengths in cancer research in Wales, particularly brain tumours and radiotherapy research, and some of you will know about the wonderful advances in proton beam therapy, which may be touched on later on. Finally, in the What's New category, we've been working hard to be an all-Wales organisation, and we've been developing new posts with our friends in North Wales, both around the laboratory and also around research nurses to support earlier phase trials. One extra little thing, we have a new executive committee that I will mention in a minute who are going to help us deliver all these good things. I mentioned those 2 domains and each with 2 work streams within them earlier. Bit of a spoiler alert here. I'm going to ask you a Mentimeter question at the end based around this slide, so brace yourselves. I've put some little pictures here to try and be prompts when it comes to voting on which of these you find the most exciting in a minute or two. Talking about these things always makes me nervous because, of course, I'm talking largely about the work of others. So I'll apologise in advance if I don't quite give your individual research the build-up it deserves. And of course, I've just focused on a few things here. There's lots more going on besides. Personalised prevention is, as I said, a really important thing to be doing to reduce the occurrence of cancers. That means adopting healthy behaviours, making patients aware of not just cancer, but how to avoid it, and also working with underprivileged communities to make sure they have access to relevant support. And a good example of that is Wales's targeted health programme. Moving to the top right now, enhanced diagnosis. Some of you will know that Sunil Dalwani, who's coming up in a short while, has a really innovative, groundbreaking trial called CONSCOP2. I won't spoil Sunil's thunder, but it involves looking at the bowel with a camera and using a blue dye, and you can see the how to pick up a polyp on the right hand side there, a better way of seeing things that could become cancer early on or have just developed in the earliest stages of cancer. Down in the bottom left, improved patient outcomes. So this is all about new therapies, and 2 particular things to mention under the heading of what are called advanced therapy medicinal products. They include cellular therapies. Some of you will have heard of so-called CAR-T therapies, where patients' own immune cells are taken, manipulated outside the body to help them fight cancers better. Or one of our executive committee members, Alan Parker, specialises in so-called oncolytic viruses, which can smash open cancer cells whilst leaving normal cells relatively unharmed. And then finally, the bottom right, oops, this is exciting. I'm going to have to go back a slide. There we go. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, optimised patient experience, taking not just scans and microscopic views of the patient's tumour, but looking at the genetic molecular signatures and the patient themselves. Roy Castle, you may remember, some of you who are nearly as old as I am, and these pictures are all to do with lung cancer, which unfortunately Roy suffered from. What all this amounts to, bringing all these things together, is what we call the SMART MDT, combining the best in research evidence with the clinical expertise in radiology, pathology, and molecular biology, and putting them together with the individual patient's values. And that's why I've put an individual's photograph up there. So one other thing that we need to focus on is working with the other organisations that are funded by Health and Care Research Wales. We're in that lozenge there, and we already interact with various other aspects of HCRW funded work, such as the Wales Gene Park have already been mentioned in the shout-outs earlier on, and the SAIL database, and Wales Cancer Bank I've spoken about. We have a long-standing collaboration with the Primary Care and Emergency Medicine Centre. My arrow there has slipped a little bit upwards, but there's also opportunities in the coming 5 years for interacting with lots of others. Time's ticking by, so I won't say any more about that. Nor will I go into detail about this. This is our centre executive team that I mentioned earlier, and big thanks to all of them in advance for the work they're going to do in coordinating the centre over the next 5 years. You'll meet some of them as this goes on. Similarly, thanks to the WCRC Hub Team under the new leadership of John Jones there, and he's assembling a new team, some old-timers there, some newcomers. So finally, we promised you a Mentimeter question. So you remember I asked you to look carefully at these. This is just for fun. This is just to get a feel for what people like. This isn't intended to be a judgment on anybody's research. I've tried to lay them out in the same way I did on the earlier slide, with some prompts there in terms of pictures. They're also going to be the same layout, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, I hope, on the Mentimeter that Hugh is about to put up. So just for fun, let's see what people think are amongst the best ideas that we can deliver in the next 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That Mentimeter is already up, so it should be on your phones, ready to go, or your laptops, wherever you're viewing it. And in fact, I'll share my screen so you can see that coming in. So exactly the same as you just saw it on John's. Here we go. Which of the following do you find most exciting? Personalized prevention of lung cancers, enhanced diagnosis of bowel tumors, improving patient outcomes through trials of ATMPs, optimizing patient experience via smart MDTs. ATMPs getting a lot of love. Here we go. And I'll leave that up again as we go into the next talk, but feel free to keep voting on that. We've got 36 respondents so far. So keep replying to that and we shall move on to the next one. But thank you so much, John, for that. You'll see John a little bit later as well, giving us a summary at the end. Perfect. Okay, so over the next 40 minutes, we've got a range of great speakers too. We've got Dr. Sunil Dalwani talking about prevention and diagnosis, Professor John Stafford talking about treatment and care, Professor Duncan Baird talking about lab science and the impact, and then we've got Julie Hepburn talking about public and patient involvement as well. So 4 great speakers, all just under 10 minutes, some of which were the Mentimeter question too. And what I'll do is whilst that speaker is speaking, I'll put the Mentimeter question up behind the scenes so you can see it as they're speaking, and then I'll bring it up at the end as well, so you have a chance to vote there too. Okay, so let's head into our first speaker with Dr. Sunil Dalwani. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Hugh. Good morning, everyone. And I just hope to give you a brief overview about the prevention and diagnosis domain that you've heard about briefly from John. So you've seen this diagram, which is the patient pathway. And suffice to say, we're talking about the left-hand side of this, the prevention and diagnosis part, which involves 2 major components: personalized prevention and enhanced diagnosis. I'll just speak a little bit about what we actually mean by these and how we're carrying this out. Personalized prevention, what we're looking at is focusing on 2 major cancers, which is lung cancer and bowel cancer, as exemplars, so that we can get all the learning we can from this to apply it to other cancer types and other sites as well. We're looking at high-risk populations, which include people who come to screening programs, and in the case of bowel, where we remove precancerous polyps as in therapeutic prevention, and use people's behavior and attitudes in preventing lung cancer. And I'll talk a bit more in detail about these as well. For enhanced diagnosis, what we're doing is working on risk stratification and risk-based diagnoses so that our healthcare systems are targeting people most appropriately rather than unnecessarily or too frequently. We're also looking at new technologies that are developing, some really exciting new technologies that our colleagues in WCRC are developing that will be used in this area of enhanced diagnosis, including biomarker development in prediction and prognosis. So we always have to start and end with the patient, the most important person in this. And the kind of research questions we're trying to answer from our patients and the population are: how do diet, lifestyle, smoking, etc. affect the risk of developing cancer? What level of risk would actually, how does the level of risk affect prevention of cancer or finding cancer earlier? And what we're trying to do is tailor cancer screening and investigations to the level of risk to make it more appropriate. And hopefully, I'll show you a brief snapshot of how new technology can help make it easier to prevent and find cancer. And we're also looking at this risk stratification, which may mean combining inherent genetic risk with lifestyle risk so that we can have a better chance of optimizing how an individual can help themselves and we can help them in prevention and early detection of cancer. Starting with personalized prevention, and one of the projects that my colleague Lee Parry is leading on is improving understanding of the impact of lifestyle, environment, and particularly diet on bowel cancer. We know that a lot of cancers, and certainly bowel cancer, starts with a mutation to a healthy intestinal stem cell. And what we're looking at is in the laboratory how dietary fiber is linked to gut bacteria, other agents that can cause or prevent cancer, and how we can study the interactions between them and take it to the clinical and population level within screening programs and people who have developed polyps and cancer in their bowel. For enhanced diagnosis, there are a number of really exciting studies that we're doing. John has mentioned CONSCOP2, and I'll come back to it in a moment, but this is another really exciting study that Paul Dyson and Lee Parry are leading on, which is supported by Cancer Research UK, where we're developing tools from single to pan-cancer screening and identifying and developing bacteria that can go and stick to or infect tumor tissue where they can be seen under specialized light, and also be used for treatment where they can stimulate an immune response and deliver therapeutic agents. My colleague Duncan Baird has done some fantastic work on telomere length analysis, and we're hoping to use this in not just bowel cancers, but other cancers as well, combining it with our risk stratified cohorts and diet and lifestyle factors. And there are huge numbers of other technologies, too many for me to name and too many people for me to name in this, but really exciting colleagues working on not just oncotrophic bacteria and telomere length analysis, but Raman spectroscopy, narrow spectrum light and dye technology, which is what we're doing in CONSCOP2, artificial intelligence image analysis, and using that in interrogation of these large sets of data. Just to emphasize the fact that we're not just looking at this in isolated small studies, but actually applying the power of this, rapidly adopting this and testing and evaluating these within cancer screening programs and primary and secondary care, as I'll show you, for both bowel and lung, for evaluation of integrated artificial intelligence and data linkage, and developing and validating population cancer risk stratification models, which will allow us to do that. Data integration, as John mentioned, is absolutely key to what we're doing, and my colleague Kevin Ashelford's the one who's leading in this area for us, and we're trying to link different types of data, whether it's pathology data, radiology data, endoscopy data, and NHS and research data as well. So essentially at population scale, we can take the CONSCOP2 is an example here where we are getting large-scale recruitment from trials, screening programs, procedure lists, where we can actually analyze tissue that is taken out at the time of colonoscopy, like polyps or early cancers, and integrating this with what I've just mentioned to you, the diet, microbiome, images, data integration, etc. I want to now focus a bit on the lung cancer side of things, which is really exciting. As you can see here, my colleague Kate Brain is leading this area with the Yorkshire Enhanced Stop Smoking Study, which again is embedded within a lung screening trial with the aim of assessing the effect of adding a personalized smoking cessation intervention to a lung cancer screening program. Really innovative design where trained practitioners using clinical information and imaging gathered from CT scans personalize according to the motivation and efficacy to quick. Another, and it would not be complete if we didn't mention the impact COVID has had, and Kate is also leading another really exciting study, which is on the impact of COVID-19 on attitudes and behaviors to cancer. And we've recruited a huge number of people into this study already in a very short span of time, where we're targeting smokers, deprived populations, and BAME populations. And optimizing symptom awareness. One of the things we're doing, which demonstrates how well we're integrating with our NHS colleagues, is the development of multidisciplinary rapid diagnostic and treatment centers, where awareness campaigns are going to target various forms of media so that we can make people more aware of their symptoms and the various methods they could present to healthcare in this. Finally, I'd like to show you this document, which I think some of you might be aware has just been released a couple of days ago, which was Cancer Research UK's Early Detection and Diagnosis Roadmap to the Future. And if you look at this document, here are a couple of themes from it. The first theme is what we've just talked about, understanding risk and prognosis, biology to technology. And I'll leave you to look at this to see exactly all the things that I've just mentioned to you are what is very gratifying to see are aligned so well with the Cancer Research UK early diagnosis strategy. Another theme, biomedical data science and systems, is also exactly what we've just talked about. And it just makes it important for us to realize, I'll leave these other themes in the end, that our networks and our teams are working really well for us to be aligned to international research focus on cancer prevention and early detection, aligned and integrated with NHS priorities. We're influencing policy and planning in healthcare with this team approach and guided by our patient and public partners. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Silwani. Amazing. Yeah, it's one thing that I've been talking to a lot of people about lately. It's one thing I've been talking to a lot of people about lately is in communicating science, is the fact that with coronavirus, it isn't just coronavirus that we're worrying about, it's also all the other things that go along with it, like prevention and diagnosis of other diseases, including cancer. So very prescient and very well delivered. Thank you so much, Dr. Silwani. Okay, heading straight on to our next speaker. We're going to do treatment and care with Professor John Stafford.
Hi everyone, sorry not to be with you. I'll just share my screen and flip through what is quite a large component of the WCRC activity. So hopefully you can see my slides. So I'm going to talk to you about the treatment care domain on the right-hand side, which you've already heard is split into two main areas: improve patient outcomes and optimize patient experience. And the overarching area is really to improve the outcomes of patients who have been diagnosed with cancer. So I'm going to run through actually our three main programs of activity based on priority areas that are mainly continuations of successful work in the previous quinquennium. And our overarching aim is to support collaborative research, if possible, prioritising junior researchers. And obviously we're highly aware of the need to attract inward investment for long-term sustainability, as John already mentioned. So I'm just going to start with a couple of highlights from our previous quinquennium, one of which is the award-winning fraction study led by Rob Jones, looking at a novel inhibitor of an AKT pathway, trying to improve outcomes, or showing improved outcomes in patients with hormone-resistant breast cancer. And another very innovative study, collaboration between Berlindra and the unique imaging capabilities in Kubrick with MR scans in patients undergoing highly targeted radiotherapy for brain metastases, called the Neurocognitive Function Study. So that's what we've done before, and we're very keen, obviously, to develop and allow people to nurture their own ideas into successful trials. So these are the people I'm going to be talking about very quickly over the next few minutes. So Rob Jones and Steve Knapper leading early phase trials, Sarah Gwynne leading radiotherapy, and Anthony Byrne and Anne-Marie Nelson running the optimized patient experience workstream, and these two work incredibly closely together. It's also worth pointing out some of the other collaborative people within WCRC that we expect to interact with a lot over the next few years. I want to start as a clinician on the impact of COVID. So this shows the recruitment by month of a large, or the current major prostate cancer trial that I'm heavily involved with nationally. And you can see the impact that COVID has had on trial activity. And that is going to be, unfortunately, a theme for our domain over the next few months, maybe even a couple of years, because I do not know what's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 months, but I'm expecting it to tail down again. But you can show that we have bounced back quickly. But the concern I have, and we need to think about, is what's going to happen to our funding sources, particularly the impact on charities and potentially changing priorities within the NHS and research councils. So I'm going to go on to start with optimised patient experience. So this is led by Anthony and Anne-Marie, who are embedded within the Mary Curie Research Centre. And the two main areas they're looking at, first one is dominantly led by Anthony, which is a more scientific assessment of an individual's patients for fitness. And the main focus is systemic therapies, and it's mainly in the hard to treat cancers. Currently, upper GI cancers, but potentially going into lung and brain cancers. Looking at a sort of multi-dimensional assessment, looking at muscle mass, task performance like sit-stand tests, and a variety of blood tests, looking at inflammatory and metabolic assessments. And then monitoring these changes before treatment. We're monitoring these areas before treatment, during treatment, and after treatment, trying to identify a response to treatment and any tolerance to treatment, because obviously we don't want to start patients on treatment which they can't tolerate. And then linked to that, but obviously a completely different pathway, research areas, Anne-Marie Nelson's looking at individualized patients' experiences before, during, and after therapies. And again, the focus is on hard to treat cancers and patients having relatively aggressive treatment, being either radiation or systemic chemotherapy, and trying to identify how patients make complex decisions, how they balance the risk of unpleasant short-term side effects with potential improvement in survival when they're feeling really unwell. Assessing their experiences before, during, and after treatment, or some patients may decide to be observed for a period of time, and as they recover from treatment. And then, possibly the hardest of all, ask them to reflect on the decisions they've made and then experiences of the care or therapy they've had. So those are the two main areas in optimising patient experience. So how is WCRC supporting them? Well, there are two research associates. One is in post, and the other one is due to start in November, and that's embedded within their group in Marie Curie Research Centre. And a degree of activity has already occurred. So there's been a grant application in upper GI cancers led by Anthony. They're also doing pilot work to try to develop how we would professionally and scientifically name the different outputs they may get from their novel patient-focused data assessment, and trying to develop automated tools, particularly in the imaging area, such as looking at sarcopenia, so that can be done on a large-scale basis. Marie's area, she's published her PAC study looking at attitudes of patients in systemic therapies for lung cancer, and work is ongoing to extend this to other tumours, as I said, the hard to treat upper GI and brain cancers. Then the background is, well, how can we use all this to influence patient care? So this is the concept of the smart MDT that you've heard or mentioned before. And effectively what we're trying to work out is a data system that we can use the physical phenotype from Anthony's work, the patient experience, attitudes and thoughts from Anne-Marie's, and put it into a data house where we include sort of conventional patient data, tumor radiomics, so looking at imaging data, genomic data and immune responses. Try to validate any models we may have of predicting outcome or tolerance of treatment with other centres on the left, and then try and take it through into actually helping patients make the right decision and helping the healthcare professionals that look after them make the right decision. So we've got to work out how to present this data to the MDTs. So that's a smart MDT concept. So moving on to the next area, and I've got quite a lot to cover. So this is led by Sarah Gwynne, who's an oncologist down in Swansea. And one of the main areas here is trying to promote multidisciplinary research via the new radiotherapy MDRG you've already heard about. So initially this year, it's been an extension of the previous Cardiff group, which led the Cardiff RadNet bid, which was unsuccessful, but helped us really clarify our aims within the Cardiff. And we want to extend this and involve this to South West and North Wales groups, so the second meeting, which is being planned at the moment. And a particular emphasis is to encourage non-medical but clinical researchers, i.e. our therapeutic radiographers. And Sarah is also undertaking a research survey across the 3 centres. WCRC funding is going specifically towards clinical research fellowships. 2 have been awarded already. One is in the immunobiology of radiotherapy, and it's led by Tom Rackley and Kath Pembroke, who are consultant oncologists in Velindre, working with Arwen Gallimore, who I'm sure you all know, in Cardiff. And this is looking in particular in the setting of very highly actively targeted radiotherapy known as SABRE. And the other area is working with Kieran Foley, Emiliano Spezzi and Phil Wardle, looking at advanced radiomics, again, with the hope in the setting of the hard to treat cancers and links to the smart MDT. And just to warn you that the next EUI is due out shortly. So we also want to try and expand our radiotherapy trial activity in the 3 centres, support leadership of our major practice training trials, and here's just a list of some of the prostate cancer trials that the group in Cardiff have been involved with nationally. And as Tom has already mentioned, there's already a lot of activity across Wales in trying to design new national proton beam trials. So then I'm going to move on to early phase trials of novel therapeutics, and this is led by Rob Jones and Steve Knapper, both in Cardiff. Rob is a medical oncologist in Velindre who looks after solid cancers, and Steve Knapper is a consultant haematologist in Cardiff and Vale. And here, WCRC contributes funding towards the partnership funding model for the 2 units, which are now really working as one in Cardiff and Vale and one in Velindre, with additional support including Velindre, Cure Leukemia, and the ECMCs from Cancer Research UK. And critical for us is the renewal bid due in next year. The aim is to diversify the trials, as John Chester's already mentioned, including CAR T-cell therapies. And clinical CAR T-therapy has restarted after COVID, but no trials yet. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has had a large impact on trial recruitment. At least one trial that Steve was going to leave has now been drawn back into the company, so that is a real shame for us. However, there are, just to give you an idea of the breadth of activity, there are 11 current trials in early phase haematology portfolio running in Cardiff and Vale, 5 different principal investigators and at least 5 different trial sites. So it shows that there is proper breadth going on in our community. So now I'm going to talk about drug radiotherapy combinations for the last couple of slides. So this is a novel area which we've been involved with in the last 2-3 years of support from WCRC. And it's really on the background of the increased enormous knowledge of cancer biology, the role of the microenvironment and the sort of biological response to radiation, and the huge number of novel targeted therapies that potentially would improve outcome in combination with radiation. So Velindre's got 3 trials open, one in head and neck cancer, one in brain cancer, and one in esophageal cancer, and we're actually the national highest recruiter for the brain cancer study. There's several trials being developed at the moment, often being led by Richard Adams and the Cardiff University's Centre for Trials Research, with strong links to the national group CT-RAD. And it's worth pointing out that Concord is a very innovative study in non-small cell lung cancer, which both Paul Shaw and Rob Jones have got major leadership roles in. There's also translation opportunities, both with in the lab and also with Anne-Marie's group, Marie Curie, looking at patient attitudes and tolerance of early phase drug radiotherapy combinations. So finally, I'm just going to talk about some work being led more by the Hub, with really a renewed approach to commercial engagement in the clinical trial area to try to increase our commercial trial activity across Wales. And there are a variety of people that we're trying to work with, be it the organisations that bring trials to centres, companies that have got IT solutions that are trying to match individualised patients with individualised trials, and then potentially direct links to big pharma. And this is really aware that we need to look at sustainability of research funding in the clinical trial area over the next few years. And I will stop there.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, John. I'm always impressed at the lengths that scientists go to create acronyms and initialisms out of the research. ORCA, Paradigm, Concord, all great ones, I think. I just want to remind everyone that if you are chatting about this on social media, WCRC 5 years is still the hashtag. Thank you to those who have posted so far. And then for the question John was talking about, it's a longer question than this, but I shortened it down because I only had a certain amount of words that I could put in. But the longer question is, in the expectation that COVID will reduce funding, I've got coffee on this, by the way. So I'm struggling to read it. In the expectation that COVID will reduce funding for academic clinical trials, would the audience support an increased focus on supporting engagement with the commercial sector to expand our commercial trial portfolio to help create a sustainable resource to deliver academic clinical trials? So as with most science and communication, a lot more context than I could fit into that headline. In the expectation that COVID will reduce funding for academic clinical trials, would the audience support an increased focus on supporting engagement with the commercial sector to expand our commercial trial portfolio to help create a sustainable resource to deliver academic trials? A lot of nuance in that, because it is difficult for everyone. I mean, a lot of people are just saying yes, though, with caveats, obviously. Active scrutiny groups to support it, if more focus on patients' experience, if appropriately governed, with patient and public benefit embedded, outputs are part of the plan, not just work for commercial companies. Yeah, we'll download all these and we'll send over to John for him to look through. I'll keep this one up as we go into our next speaker, which is Professor Duncan Byrne, who's going to talk about laboratory science and impact. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can get the wonderful, I'm not sure where Duncan is, somewhere nice by the looks.
Actually, that's Dartmoor.
Oh, Dartmoor,
a few months ago.
You've got good mobile signal anyway. Thank you, Professor Duncan Byrne.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. So I'm a non-clinical academic geneticist, and I represent laboratory science and the impact agenda on the senior leadership group. Now, I'm sure you're aware from the original or the first quinquennium of the WCRC, we had a strong component of which was the preclinical theme, and that theme contributed disproportionately to the research outputs in terms of grant capture and published outputs. We want to continue with that type of work, but in the new quinquennium, it's been de-emphasized a little bit, so there are less investment into this general area. And we are specifically trying to focus on clinical applications whereby we can try to enable laboratories to translate their discovery science through into the clinic. And I think really that is the type of, that's an ideal use of the WCRC's funding for these types of science laboratories. And so of course, laboratory science very naturally provides unique selling points. It's by its very nature, any laboratory science that is successful in obtaining funding is able to provide unique USPs that are good for the WCRC. In terms of selecting the areas that we decided to include in the next quinquennium, we emphasized the importance of external validation. And by that I mean where certain laboratories have been able to obtain substantive grant income from national and international funders, as well as high-level outputs. So it was very much a sort of quality decision. And of course, we wanted the science to be impactful, in terms of generating ref cases, impact on patients, patents, commercial interactions, and commercial spin-out companies, for example. So those are sort of principles that we used to decide which areas we wanted to fund. So we embedded the science, the laboratory science, to within the various work streams that Sunil and John have been outlining. And some of the posts that we decided to support were further development of USPs from the first 5 years. So we included sort of cancer immunology, telomeric prognostics, and antibody drug conjugate technologies, as well as developing a few newer areas, capitalizing on the Advanced Therapy Treatment Centre, expertise within Wales for exosomes, and oncotrophic bacteria. So I'll whiz quickly, I'm conscious of time actually, because we're overrunning a little bit. So I'll whiz through some of the areas that we're going to support. So we mentioned telomeric prognostics. So this is an area where we've developed this sort of high resolution approach to determine telomere length. Sunil mentioned it earlier, and applied this. So we use this as a tool in the laboratory to do discovery science. But then we've been translating this into clinical situations and been able to show that high resolution telomere length provides really quite significant prognostic and importantly also predictive information in a variety of different tumor types, both hematological and solid tumors. So we want to carry on doing more of this sort of work and working in validation cohorts, discovery cohorts, clinical trial cohorts, etc. And there's also applications actually for this technology in the development of immunotherapies. We want to start working or continue work in liquid biopsies. capitalizing on our local expertise in exosomes with Alec Clayton and Jason Webber, and combining that with our together with our work in ctDNA from the Orwell's Medical Genetics Service, and as well as some expression profiling work that Matt Smalley has undertaken to show prognostic signatures, shown down here on the right. And so we want to develop that as an area over the next few years. We're going to continue to support the strong cancer immunology groups that we have within the WCRC, in particular Arwin Gallimore and Andy Godkin's group. They have had success in clinical translation of their work through into the clinic in the form of the TACTIC trial, and they're taking that on to another level of trial. They've had commercialization of antibodies, LAG3 antibodies, etc. And so we're going to continue with that work, profiling immune biomarkers and novel immunotherapeutics. Oops, pardon me. And then we're also going to continue to support therapeutic developments, supporting Steve Conlon's lab in Swansea, working in breast and ovarian cancer, and also they'll be developing various tumour models that can be applied for laboratories across the WCRC. For example, tumour models that ovarian cancer tumour models that Alan Parker might be using to test the viral therapies that he's developing. So that's just a very brief overview of some of the laboratory science that we've been undertaking. And the other aspect of my role is to have oversight of the impact agenda. And this is really important for the WCRC. We have to keep demonstrating our impact and our relevance. We need to be doing that because at the end of the day, all of our work, it's about patients. We need to demonstrate our impact to patients and the general public. The funders need to know about it, the policy makers, and commercial interactions as well. And this can be at all levels. It can be very localized types of impact, and it can range through to national and international impact. We have examples of all of those, and some of these have already been alluded to. So we have a really strong public and patient involvement within WCRC. In fact, we're an exemplar of that. And Julie Hepburn, who's leading this for the next quinquennium, will tell you more about that after my talk. We had, for example, the faction trial, which I think John's already alluded to, so I won't talk about that. We've got the development of telomere-based prognostics and spin-out companies. We've got examples of lung cancer screening and how, so Kate Brain's work, for example, investigating barriers to early symptom presentation in the community and then targeting high-risk groups, which has resulted in increased symptom awareness and GP referrals for patients with lung cancer. We had the Stampede trial, which is one of the largest trials in the world, in fact, that has resulted in a change in treatment for men with prostate cancer. So we need you to inform us of potential impact cases at whatever stage, be it just gradually evolving and nascent cases. Keep us involved. It's possible that we can find ways to help you, not just perhaps with publicity, linking with patient groups, commercial interactions potentially, or maybe we can even directly support your impact case as well. So please let myself and Jodie know at any stage, and we'll keep a running sort of tally of those impact cases, and we can start to develop those. And then when they're ready for the next stage, then we can go to help you go to the next stage. Okay, I'll finish there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Duncan. It's difficult. It's something I shout about a lot, being a communicator of science, is how much we should tell people about the good work that we do. I think being Welsh, or British in general, we don't do that enough. I have a lot of American friends who say that I just need to share about my work more, and it goes for Wales Cancer Research Centre and everyone, because it does do good things. Like, it makes people aware of the value of it. So impact is super important. And up on the Mentimeter at the moment is exactly what Duncan was talking about. So the question is, what can the WCRC do to help you maximize the impact of your work? Some great input already. Integrate the UK national standards for PPI in all research. Have an accurate and up-to-date list of all work with mapped pathways outwards from WCRC to those parts. Yeah, maximize the impact of your work is important. I was working with, supposed to, before COVID came in, work with the NHS earlier in the year on looking at how we can better show the public that it's important to be part of research. And we talked about how much of a stigma research can have, or the term research, of being poked and prodded and used as guinea pigs and whatnot. Same as nuclear, same as GMOs and a bunch of other stuff. So destigmatizing, talking to the public about that and showing what impact you can have is super important. More collaboration internationally, always a good thing. That seems to be a running theme through this. And, Wales Cancer Research Centre is a huge part of that, of just hooking up different parts of healthcare to make sure that there is more collaboration going on. And we don't always do that well as scientists. I've worked in a couple of places in academia where, two teams can be right next door to each other and not even know each other exists. So I understand that collaboration is difficult, but it is something that people want more of. Help funding it, especially when you've got the research going on, siphoning funding off into talking about impact and public engagement is tough, I realize, but it does come back to you. It does promote communications around them, invest in it, and support. Yeah, all good. I'll leave this one up as we go into the next one, and we'll change it through the next talk. And we're lucky enough to have Julie Hepburn with us, who's going to talk about public and patient involvement. Over to you once I stop sharing this. Julie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Hugh. Good morning, everyone. I'm the lay lead for public and patient involvement for the WCRC, having taken this role over at the beginning of April from June Fitzgibbon, who many of you will know. Our group of 6 lay research partners exists to offer help to researchers within the WCRC on all matters relating to patient and public involvement. And our role is perhaps best described as a sort of consultancy service and critical friend. You'll find more details about our role and other related documentation on the WCRC website. In the previous 5 years, we were linked to the 4 themes for research within the centre, but we've now mapped across to the new structure and are linked to the new programme leads, maintaining the previous working relationships wherever possible. The organogram, which was shown earlier and is on the website, shows exactly which research partners are working in each area of research. We found recently that one area had not been covered by the previous structure, and this was for non-medical clinical professionals. So we've rectified this and supplied some research partner help. If you feel that your area appears not to be covered by the current organogram, do get in touch and we'll arrange some research partner support for you. Working alongside our lay research partners, we've recently appointed a new academic partner, Alicia Newman, who is the Research Associate and Senior Team Manager from the Marie Curie Palliative Care Research Centre. Alicia has extensive previous experience in supporting public and patient involvement and will be a valuable addition to our team. Like everyone, our work's been affected by COVID-19 and by the slowing of requests for our help, as researchers concentrated on more pressing clinical concerns. And we've had to reassess where we can make the most effective contribution in the current situation. It's difficult to predict and plan PPI input for the longer term future. So in the next 10 minutes, I'll outline for you what we're hoping to achieve in the shorter term. The first of these is to recruit a lay research partner for North Wales, as our current membership is very South Wales based. Social distancing and Zoom meetings have shown how we can effectively work together as a group at a distance, and we're currently recruiting a North Wales-based research partner who will join us in the next few weeks. I'll arrange to introduce them to researchers in that area as soon as possible. The second issue we're working on is to improve and shorten the current system for recruiting public and patient representatives to take part in developing research proposals at the pre-funding stage. Many funders require evidence of this early public and patient involvement, and there is already an Enabling Involvement Fund run by Health and Care Research Wales, which will support lay representatives before funding has been awarded. At present, it can take 5 or 6 weeks to recruit someone through this fund, which can cause difficulty when funding deadlines are imminent. And we've been having discussions with Barbara Moore from Health and Care Research Wales Support Centre on how we can reduce this to 3 weeks. WCRC will recruit a group of lay representatives who are interested in doing this work from the public involvement community run by Health and Care Research Wales. By pre-warning people that an advert will appear, we can speed up the recruitment process significantly. And this will also help in increasing the diversity of lay representatives with a wider range of experience relating to different cancer types than is available within our small group. People recruited for this group will also receive information and training on carrying out the type of review work involved. We'll be recruiting for this group in the near future and will circulate details to researchers once it is up and running. Until then, any urgent shorter pieces of review work you need, such as patient information documentation and lay summaries can be sent either direct to your research partner or to the lay faculty for the School of Medicine, and details of this are available on the website as well. The UK public involvement standards are obviously high on our agenda, and we'll be working to publicise and promote these and encourage their usage throughout the WCRC. Wide adoption of the standards throughout the centre will be a definite quality mark that we'll be aiming to achieve. And we're very fortunate in having Bob McAllister as one of our research partners, who was a member of the National Committee which drew up these standards. And he will be leading our work to have these adopted. Lastly, in line with the current move towards virtual work, we're also pulling together some selected online information resources on public involvement for both research partners and researchers. And in addition to this, we'll also be listing some basic cancer science information sites. Obviously, these are for the lay partners only. And these will be designed to give lay partners some basic level of science understanding, which will give them more insight into the discussions which take place at trial management groups and steering committees. And all of these, again, will be hosted on the WCRC website. Future developments we have in the pipeline will include increasing the diversity of lay partners, particularly in relation to young and paediatric cancer research, impact measurement for public involvement work, and looking at the role research partners can play in multidisciplinary research groups. These are ideas at present, and we still have a lot of work to do on the detail. I think that's all from me today. If you feel you could benefit from our input, please get in touch with your research partner through your program lead initially, so that they can monitor requests. And if you're in any doubt about who to contact, just send a message to me through the WCRC web's address. I look forward to answering any questions you have about PPI later on this morning. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julie. And we've got a Mentimeter question to go with that. Let's share that screen. An easy one for you. Do you feel you need more information on what help the WCRC research partners can provide? Just an easy yes or no question. But if you do have more to add to this, I'll be giving the contact information for WCRC in a bit. I'm sure you can get to Julie that way. I'm enjoying this, seeing how it goes back and forth from yes to no. One of the things, I mean, we could all do with more information. at any one time. I'm sure a lot of you are bombarded with it, but yeah, I think having just maybe not more information, but more concise information. Normally more information is pretty good. Again, I'll leave this one up for a little bit because so it'll be on your phones. But I'm just going to do a quick talk about WCRC and what actually they can do for you as we head through, and I can introduce our center execs and then into the coffee break. Not that I need it. I've currently got through 3/4 of a pot of coffee. Good. Just another reminder, hashtag WCRC 5 years is where we are at the moment with the hashtag. Perfect. So what can the WCRC do for you? We want to look quickly at things like multidisciplinary research groups, support and facilitation of a bunch of MDRGs to encourage cross-discipline discussion. And multidisciplinary research groups have been talked about already, but are super important. In administration, development strategies and coordinating funds, something WCRC does well. In data management too. Communication and events. And like I said, they've done a lot of public engagement at WCRC. The website is actually really, really good. If you haven't been to it so far, head over, just Google WCRC, or actually look for Wales Centre. Hold on, because I Googled this morning, put in Wales Cancer Research Centre, because I typed in WCRC and it's the World Communion of Reformed Churches. So don't put in WCRC, put in Wales Cancer Research Centre. If you want to head over to the website. Regional champions. Role of the regional champions includes working with fellow champions, ensuring the Centre Executive Committee is promptly briefed on region-specific issues, which is, as we know, is super important when it comes to working nationally, but also regionally. Advise the CEC on particular needs of community of researchers in their own region. So it's good to have these regional champions to make sure that the WCRC is doing their work nationally, but also focusing on those regions too. And then public and patient involvement is, again, something that's close to my heart. Making sure that the 6 PBI representatives are there to give expert advice on all aspects of public involvement in your research. If you want to contact WCRC, wcrc@cardiff.ac.uk is what we want. So wcrc@cardiff.ac.uk. And it's a great way to get through to the WCRC. I'm going to do a quick roll call for the people that you can get through to on that email, but people you're going to probably hear from in the next section, in the panelist section. So on your Zoom, I should currently be spotlighted, but what I actually want to do is click on the gallery view to bring everyone up. This might overwhelm a lot of people. Normally does me, because we've got a lot of participants in this. But I just want to do a quick roll call with everyone that we have here, and then we're going to bring a Mentimeter up of questions that you can ask panelists in our next section after the coffee break. So I'd like, when I call your name out, just to give us a quick wave so that we can see where you are. So we've got Lee Parry, who's part of Personalized Prevention Enhanced Diagnosis. Hi, Lee. Kevin Bradley in Enhanced Diagnosis. Hi, Kevin. Anthony Byrne, Physiological Assessment. Here he is. Alan Parker, Targeted Therapeutics. Hi, Alan. Oh, it's a nice background. Sarah Gwynne, Radiotherapy. Hi, Sarah. Anne-Marie Nelson, Personalized Experience. She was taking photos of me on Twitter earlier, picking my nose. Not really, I was stroking my beard. Steve Conlon, Innovation in Industry. Richard Adams, Trials Developments. Oh, there they are. John's put them up for everyone to see. Perfect. Nicola Gale, Non-Medical Clinical Researchers. Jane Hopkinson, Non-Medical Clinical Researchers. And John Jones, Director of Operations, for sure. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Good roll call. So when we get through to, I love a flowchart. I love being unapologetically geeky with people in these kind of events. I don't get, doing public engagement, I don't get to do it often, but I love when people are just like, this is me. Okay, so let's head to the Mentimeter for this, because we're going to be asking panelists to answer questions. So what I'd like you to do, if I can share the screen. Perfect. Is you can ask our panel questions, but I'd like you to make sure that you ask, well, if it is for a specific person, make sure you put that person on there. So you can ask the panel generally anything, but if it's for a specific person or if it's in a specific field, for one of those fields I just called out, ask that person there. That sound good? Perfect. I'll take all that as a yes. I'll leave this up during the break. Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll leave this up during the break. It'll be there on your phones or on your laptop if you're using that. We had a question as well of will the slides be shared later? We're going to try and get the video for this on the website, the recording for this on the website. So if you need to go back to it at any point, you can go back. You need to look at it on the website or YouTube or something like that. Cool. So that Mentimeter will be up there during the break. If you're not on it, menti.com, use the code 8767157. Hashtag is WCRC 5 years. You've got 10 minutes for a coffee and toilet break, and we'll come back afterwards with our panel discussion. All right. Thank you everyone so much. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful coffee break and toilet break. I continued probably 4/5 through a pot of coffee now, so we're getting towards. I didn't have to top it back up, which was wonderful. Okay, thank you everyone for putting your questions into Mentimeter and also sending it through in the chat and the Q&As and everything like that. We've got a lot of stuff to get through, but we've got some time to do it. We've probably got about 30 minutes to do that in, which is great. We've got our full panel out. I'm going to take this off screen share now, and hopefully you can see me. I've got our panel on gallery view. You can do the same if you like, or spotlight the speaker. Both of those is absolutely fine. I'm going to throw out some questions that we've had through our Mentimeter and other ways. And the panelists will answer the ones that they think is appropriate to them. But I'm going to start off with one on unique selling points. I'm going to throw it to John Chester first off, and he can throw it out to anyone that he feels fit to as well. So look into the future and the increased competitiveness to win limited research funding. Do we need to trump out our unique selling points? What does the panel think are our strongest unique selling points in Wales? I think that's a wonderful question because Wales in general has a lot of unique selling points, and Wales Cancer Research also does too. So look into the future and the increased competitiveness to win limited research funding. Should we trump out our unique selling points? And what do we think that those are? John, could I bat that one to you first, and then from you on to anyone else? Probably about 5 minutes for each one of these questions, I think, as we go through.
Of course, Hugh. Thanks a lot. Very happy to step up and start off discussion on this one, and I'll try not to take more than a fraction of the 5 minutes. This is a fairly common question, and I'm going to give an answer I frequently give, which may seem a bit of a cop-out, but isn't really, and that is there's almost nothing that Wales can or does do that is completely unique. The world of cancer research is absolutely immense, and there's no field that we own. However, we make very, very special contributions in a number of areas, and the combination of our activities is what makes us unique, really. I touched on some of the things in my talk that we intend to continue doing, but I think one that I would highlight that we've been discussing in our internal group recently is one that John Stafford touched on very nicely, but obviously didn't have much time for earlier, and that's unique capacities in Wales around imaging and the use of imaging data. In terms of the actual imaging capabilities that we've got, we have the Positron Emission Tomography Imaging Centre, otherwise known as PETIC, which is based in Cardiff. It's one of a relatively small number in the UK, and is one of an even smaller number that has its own so-called cyclotron for generating specialist tracers, which allow us to see where tumours are and assess response to them. There's another one that again happens to be in Cardiff, but based in the university, in the university's Brain Research Imaging Centre, Kubrick, which is literally one of only 3 or 4 in the world with the capabilities that it has. And I think the trick for us is to do that combination. And John touched on strengths in putting data together, data integration, and the quantitation of some of that imaging capability is so-called radiomics. And I think what we should be doing is taking that radiomic data, putting it with clinical and molecular data to form a more complete picture of the tumour and the person in whom that tumour hopefully gets cured or successfully treated. So as I say, I apologise if that seems a cop-out answer. It absolutely isn't, but that's one of the examples, and there are others where we can put together things that aren't necessarily unique as in being the only one in the world, and generate a collective something that is genuinely unique.
Perfect. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll come in, Hugh.
Perfect.
I think there's something within the NHS in Wales that people may or may not know about. There's a move towards a national data repository and a cancer data repository, which is the aim to get all the relevant clinical data from all the different systems in a complete nation together. And that obviously, if that occurs, it will be fantastic for the NHS, be great for tracking patients through the system, but it's a fantastic resource for us to integrate with. So that is coming, and it's coming effectively.
Hi, can I say something?
Sorry, can I say something?
Go ahead, Duncan, then Lee.
Duncan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. All I was going to really say was that, obviously the question was, should we identify our USPs? Of course we should, and we should do that all the time. And obviously, from my perspective, the laboratory science side of things, that's how any laboratory scientist can exist. They have to identify their unique selling points. And so we do have USPs within Wales, and they are ones that we have identified within the WCRC. And as I said in my brief talk, really, those are the ones that have been validated externally by journal, by the publishers, by the journals, and also by the funders.
Perfectly.
Much along the lines of what Duncan was going to say, actually, but just to add, one of the strengths we have is the size of the WCRC. It incorporates many universities and hospitals within Wales, which allow us to come under that umbrella of the WCRC. And just to sort of, something that was fed back to me from one of my CRUK grants was that it's possible that this type of research was only possible in Wales due to the sort of the team we put together with multiple universities and the hospitals, which is not unique within the country being able to do that, but it's certainly supported by something like the WCRC, which helps us put these together, these larger multi-centre, multi-institute bids.
Yeah, again, that talk about collaboration and what we can do more to kind of talk to each other on it. And John Stafford mentioned NHS, which rolls wonderfully onto our next question of that came in on the chat, which is any ideas of how to work with our NHS senior colleagues to break through barriers of understanding in relation to research and importance of protected time to conduct high quality research. So, how do we work with our NHS senior colleagues better to break down those barriers? Anyone from the NHS want to come in on that one?
I could probably come in on both fronts, Stu.
Perfect. Great.
So yeah, Richard here. So I think, I mean, both NHS and university positions, as a number of us are, I think it is crucial that we can demonstrate to the NHS the value of the work. I think certainly our patients will speak for that, and Julie may want to come in on that element, is that patients do value the concept of being able to be involved in research. And that value, I think, has to be taken through to the way that the NHS delivers research. And we do have those partnerships in place between academia and the NHS, and we really have to work and enhance them. The difficulty I think we all have is having time for leaders to drive these things forward, and the investment in that time is something that I think is sometimes struggle within the NHS, who are stretched in other avenues. But it does bring in great things to the NHS, not only particularly for the patients, but more active research areas, build up better quality of care, and there's good evidence that works. And it brings investment back into the NHS as well. So I think getting an understanding within the NHS of the importance of that is critically important.
Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in?
I can probably add to that. It's Sunil here.
Thanks, Sunil. And then we'll jump to Julie to add to what Richard was saying after that. Thanks.
So I think Richard's absolutely right. I think it's also different for clinical versus non-clinical researchers in NHS settings. And for clinical researchers, in some ways, it's more structured for medics, not quite as structured for non-medics or AHPs. And I think there are some questions about AHPs as well. And that's where I think the real challenges are, because within medic researchers, there is a structure to job timetabling and demonstrating the value of the research. But our HP colleagues don't get that same structure. And as a result, I think find it much harder to convince NHS line management of that. I'm not sure that we have got a specific solution to that, other than I think better engagement at a much senior level with R&D leads and with AMDs and MDs in the different health boards to try and improve that.
Thank you very much. And Julie?
I think we have a critical role to play really as patients or ex-patients and members of the public, because we have experienced the NHS from the other side in a different way to clinicians and researchers experiencing the NHS. And the government has said that patients are at the front of everything they do. So, you know, I think we've got an important role to play.
For sure. Yeah, everyone has a super important role to play. And one of the other questions that came in on collaboration was, how can we best coordinate links and collaboration between public, which is university and NHS, both of which we've just been talking about, and then private industry, the private industry sector partners. And this was directly for Steve Conlon. Anyone else, if you want to throw that to anyone else as well, that's absolutely fine. So how can we best coordinate links and collaboration between the public, the university and NHS we've just been talking about, and private industry, the sector partners? Steve.
Great, thanks, Ewan. Thanks for the question. And I think it's a critically important part of what we do in progressing cancer research in Wales. At the end of the day, the research that we can do in universities is only funded to a certain extent. So the connection to industry is actually vital if we're going to take those discoveries through to translation and through to patients. And that's just the way the funding system works. For example, with drugs, there's really only pharmaceutical companies that can fund a phase 3 study, which is needed to really get a drug to everybody. How do we do it? We have some great initiatives already across Wales, great connections through the clinical trials networks and other trials opportunities we're developing through the WCRC and through the work with John Jones and I have been doing recently. And then we also have a link to the Life Science Hub in Wales. And last year, together with Life Science Hub, we organised a cancer innovation conference, which was solely focused towards industry. So there's a lot to offer. We just talked about USPs. We're developing those, advanced therapeutics and functional genomics around diagnostics are all strengths that we've heard about today and are emerging. So it's really to highlight those strengths and to take them out to industry. So those links are critical. We can't just work as a Wales cancer researcher within Wales, research centre within Wales. We have to face outwards through our connections that the centre has, but through also advertising, if you like, the real strengths we have. And industry are looking for these opportunities and will come and work with us. Got plenty of examples and we'll continue to grow on those.
Thanks so much, Steve. You mentioned John Jones, Director of Operations. Can I throw over to you, John?
Yes, Steve's already mentioned a few initiatives that we've started, both nationally and internationally. And I think John Chester mentioned earlier on, we need to look outward. And that's something that we've started this year. And we've got a big focus on that. And already we've got quite a few collaborations that have started both in China, Spain, and Poland. So we are making progress, and we are trying to, as Steve said, advertise what we're good at.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Hugh, do you mind if I just say something? It's John.
Go for it, John.
I'll be touching on this briefly in my subsequent talk, but there's an important post-COVID world issue to this. As many people on this call will know, a large proportion of cancer research is done via charities. We've got some fantastic charities in Wales of our own, and also we've got very good contacts with Cancer Research UK, which is the biggest cancer charity in the world bar none. They're all taking a very big hit. And if we are not to take a big hit by our funders, a shortage of funds, we've got to look to diversify our funding base. And I personally see commercial as being an important opportunity here. Back entirely what both John Jones and Steve Conlon have said there. I think we need to be looking to work ever harder with commercial companies, not just in the science side of things, where one naturally thinks of collaborations occurring, but also in the clinical trials world. Steve was absolutely right about what he said about big pharma doing the later phase trials, but we also need to work with biotech companies in the early phases of trials, and we've been having several really interesting studies being put to us just in the last couple of months around the use of novel DNA-based vaccines and novel viruses that can attack cancer. So we need to be always looking at that. And of course, we've demonstrated our success. Rob Jones's fantastic faction trial has been mentioned a couple of times already. So we know we can do it. We need, however, to look for ever more opportunities to do so.
Yeah, and that's a great point. One of the things, well, some of the stuff we've talked about already is the experimental science that WCRC does really well. One of the questions that came in was, what about social science? Does WCRC do any social science style stuff? Anne-Marie's putting her hand up there. Can I throw it to you?
Yeah, we certainly do. And in fact, I wasn't quick enough to say, but I think also that one of the unique USPs, given it's a hardcore cancer centre, is the social science that we do and the patient experience that we also work with. So the Marie Curie team is very entrenched within the WCRC, and we have a range of sociologists, psychologists, language specialists, all sorts of people representing social science. And not just us, lots of the allied healthcare professionals, for instance, also use social science. So it is deeply embedded already.
And what do you think, Anne-Marie, is like the good stuff that you do, but also the barriers that you come across in the social science realm when it comes to cancer research?
It's always difficult. So the way I got my in, if you will, is to link onto clinical trials and embed patient experience within clinical trials. And once people can understand what it is that you can do, and then, you know, here we are, I lead a program now for patient experience because it is valued by clinicians, by trialists, by academics. And so it's like John said, you have to spread your wings a little bit. You have to collaborate with people that you wouldn't normally collaborate with. No offense to anyone here. So yeah, you just have to be willing to adapt.
Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
No, I'd come in on that as well. I second that.
So Richard, and then we'll jump to you, Jane, after that.
I think there's a huge untapped resource. You know, there has been traditionally a focus, I think, as Anne-Marie alludes to, on clinicians. I mean, the situation oncologists, surgeons sort of doing and leading research, but the whole concept of cancer is its multidisciplinary facets, really, and using a team approach is what makes us powerful and strong, and could potentially be our USP, given the strength that we've got in things like the Marie Curie Institute and elsewhere. I think we need to take these opportunities. We've got a questionnaire out at the moment, which is on behalf of WCRC, which is essentially asking people what the barriers are to research within the NHS in Wales as clinical and allied health professionals. And we're really trying to reach out across the whole community to understand some of those factors so that we can then look into them and support and help. Again, linking on to Anne-Marie's project, I mean, sometimes even just concepts of starting people off with studies within a trial, things called swaps, which is a nice way to get leverage and actually get engaged around a research area that I think is critically important.
Thanks, Richard. Jane?
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jane Hopkinson, Valindra, Professor of Nursing and Interdisciplinary Cancer Care, employed by Cardiff University. A number of observations I'd like to make. I agree with what Richard has just said, that team working is important. Team working across sectors. So when we're talking about industry and NHS, I think we need to see teams emerging that are across different sectors, bringing synergy. If I go back to the question about how do we get NHS managers on side with this, I think we need to raise awareness of the relationship between research active organisations and quality of care, quality of services. You know, we've got evidence supporting that now. It's absolutely what the NHS wants. It wants to give excellent care to the people of Wales and the UK. So there's something for us to hook into there. And then the question of how do we how do we raise the profile of cancer research? I'd like to see one of our USPs in Wales is that everybody engaged in cancer care, cancer services, has some sort of involvement in research. Now, it might be awareness, it might be supporting recruitment into studies, it might be collecting data for studies, or it might actually be leading studies, research questions of relevance to people affected by cancer in Wales. Something that I think concerns me about today's meeting is we have quite a medical focus within what's been presented. And I think there's perhaps so much more that we could be doing in Wales by just broadening the scope of our activity and looking beyond the experimental science to look at how other scientific approaches can help us with our knowledge generation and knowing how to better support those who are affected by cancer. So I've covered quite a lot of ground in that. I'm sure there are people that will disagree with me and people that are right on side. You know,
no, that's what these panel discussions are all about, to get thoughts and stuff out there. Obviously, we've got a short amount of time to get through as much stuff as we possibly can. But you touch on some great points. Anyone want to jump in after that? Pick up on any of those points?
Do you mind if I do again?
Go for it, John.
John, I'm certainly not going to disagree with Jane, as she knows I agree with her absolutely. I'm a huge believer, as I've said in the answer to one of the Q&A questions, in multidisciplinary research and in non-medical clinical researchers, as I call them. And we do have a specific post shared by Jane and Nicola on the executive for exactly that reason. However, just doing that, while it's a good thing in itself, is not enough. As some people on this call will know, I and a few others have put a lot of time into trying to support a non-medical clinical researcher, and have run into problems with the NHS not being able to release them and support their career. That's nobody's fault, but it is an indication of how very difficult it can be. I think the medical profession is lucky in that there's a long history and things have been adjusted over time to allow medics. I think we do have to put extra effort into supporting our nursing and allied health professional colleagues who have they have just as many good research ideas as medics, but less opportunities. And we've absolutely got to support that area of activity.
Thanks, John. Anthony, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think there are a number of ways in which we can build on past successes that, although they've been small, they've been very important in terms of some of the non-medical fellowships, for example, that have been obtained. And two of the areas that I think would be important to focus on are that capacity building through things like MSc qualifications to support non-medical fellow researchers to develop their methodological capacity and build towards the studies within studies that Richard talked about, and then further on to MPhils and PhDs and high value national UK fellowships. And we already have a very good base for that, and it's a matter of being collective and collaborative in how we build on that. And the second bit is again, it's about making research relevant to practice and improving our knowledge transfer. And one good exemplar of that is the PACER service, which is an evidence review service funded by WCRC that supports services and clinicians in palliative care to have the evidence based for their service development or for their clinical practice. And the third thing I just wanted to highlight, because I think it's a fantastic development, led initially by Richard Clarkson, and now all the heads of the MDRGs, the chairs of the MDRGs. But the MDRG concept is superb, and it's ahead of the game in terms of what other devolved nations and England have been doing in terms of clinical studies groups. I think Wales' idea of having clinicians of all descriptions and basic scientists working together as a single group to develop projects is absolutely excellent and the way forward.
Thanks, Anthony. Anyone else want to jump in?
Can I come back in, please?
Of course, Jane.
Thank you. just to raise awareness of an exciting development that's happening across the nurse and allied health professional community. So we've had the good fortune of winning the Cancer Research Network support for an All Wales board for nurse and allied health cancer research. So the first meeting will be in November, and that will enable us to build an infrastructure across Wales. We've got representation in the 3 regions. So together, I hope we can work on that challenge of building research capacity across Wales in nurse and AHP research, such that Anthony just acknowledged there. It hasn't been a level playing field previously. There hasn't been the same education and funding opportunities for nurses and AHPs, and I hope we'll begin to see that change a little into the future.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. A lot of support for it as well on the questions and the chat from Karen and Sarah. And actually, it was one of the questions that we got in on the Mentimeter was, what is the plan for non-medical research, which was pointed at Jane, but also Nicola as well. So Nicola, I don't know if you want to finish us off with that question.
I think we've got some grand plans really to try and create a network of AHP and nursing colleagues who research within Wales. So I think we have 3 kind of key objectives really. One is about actually representing AHP and nurses' voices to the Wales Cancer Research Centre. We want to promote collaboration, and we want to promote skills as well, and kind of build that research capacity. So with our event, which I think is the 19th of November, I think Jodie will correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to have an online event to bring together nursing and allied health professions, research, people who are interested in research. So yeah, want a quick opportunity to promote that, and I hope to see as many people online on that date as possible. I don't know if Jane, you want to add anything to that?
I think it's okay to announce our keynote speaker that day. We have Professor Mary Wells, who is over in London and has been instrumental in building research capacity in nursing and AHP for an NHS trust in London. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what she's got to say on the 19th of November.
Thanks, you.
Wonderful, thank you both. So 19th of November, pop that in your diaries. And a great start to the next, what I found out just now is called a quinquennial that happens every 5 years. So a great start to the next quinquennial. And one of the questions that we had in was to all and any panel members. So any that haven't had the chance to speak yet, it'd be great to hear off you. What must we do better in Quinc 2, in Quinquennial 2 compared to Quinc 1? From Bob, thank you very much. So who wants to jump in on that? What must we do better in Quinc 2 compared to Quinc 1?
I'll chip in with a little thought there, if that's okay then, Hugh, because I've said nothing so far. I think,
thanks, Alan.
As always, collaboration is key, and I think we are working towards a fantastic way of collaborating better across Wales through the MDRGs. That's kind of come about in the last couple of years. So we've already kind of begun that process of working better between academics and clinicians and really doing the best translational research we possibly can do. I think the other thing we've also touched on, we know that the funding environment is going to be tough. And I think, you know, Steve and John are going to have big roles to play here in helping us with progressing things, not just financially in terms of funding research by those interactions with industry, but as was touched on earlier in the first question I think we had, actually I'm learning rapidly myself as an academic trying to translate something, that those interactions with industry are not just really important for financing research, but they're also important for driving clinical trials, not just the late stage stuff, but actually if you want to move sleekly and efficiently and quickly through to the clinic in early phase clinical trials, having industry involvement is really key there and really important. So I think they're two big ones I'd highlight. And I think we're doing pretty well with that already, but they're the things we really need to drive forward in the next 5 years, I think.
Thank you so much. Anyone who has another chance to speak yet? Want to jump in on anything or anything to add? John Stafford.
Yeah, so this is something that John and John have driven into me, is that we have to expect to get less funding from HCRW over the years, and so we need to be planning for long-term sustainability. So whether that's commercial engagement or funding from other sources, we need to take it very seriously. Hopefully we will show our value again in 5 years' time, but we need to plan for that not to happen, because I think we all feel there is a very different community in Wales in the last 5 years because of WCRC. We actually know each other much better. So there's so much value, and we need to make sure we continue to get some sort of funding in, whatever the external funding sources are.
Thank you so much. Steve?
Just picking up on Alan's point as well about the collaboration. Cancer research in WCRC sits really well in a number of other activities supported by Health and Welsh Government across precision medicine. So we have 4 precision medicine areas: patient imaging, pathology, genomics, and advanced therapies. And the centre is involved in all of those areas. So really what we're doing is for the cancer patients of Wales and wider, really involving them in initiatives that are government-led and that we can help deliver on, particularly for our cancer patients, as I say.
Thanks so much. Lee?
Sorry, it was on mute. It's just further to the collaboration. So the MDRGs up to this point have been focused very much on particular tumour types in particular organs. It'd be good to sort of promote the thinking around the new sort of themes of the WCRC, early detection diagnosis, as we move through, and to bring people into those MDRGs so they don't feel excluded because they don't work in that particular tissue, even though they may have many techniques, expertise, or maybe even the work they're unaware of its application to some of the things we're interested in within those tissue types as well. So expanding those collaborations and encouraging people to sort of get more involved with them and not be too focused maybe on the tissue that we work within the MDRG, and more about what they can bring to the problems in that area.
Great. Anyone else lastly on what we need to do in the next 5 years, above and beyond the amazing work you've done in the last 5 years?
Perhaps just to come back to that again, it comes down to collaboration again, and we've talked about MDRGs and how fantastic they've been and how we can improve on those still further. But you know, there's, I think John touched on it earlier, that we do work with other HCRW funded centres, but again, there's opportunities there to not just work amongst ourselves and different MDRGs, but across different centres funded by HCRW, and communicating with those centres and working how we can work together in the restricted funding environment that we currently have may be very beneficial in the next 5 years.
Great. Yeah, we've talked about collaboration. You know, it seems to be a running theme within this, and I know how good WCRC is at that collaboration. So I've got a question. One last question. I think it was from a Sarah Gwynne question. So I'm not sure if it was from Sarah Gwynne or for Sarah Gwynne. It was. Did you say it was or wasn't from you?
Wasn't from me, no.
It wasn't from you. Oh, so it's a question for you then. About changes, name one change to a WCRC feature or work in practice that would assist you. And we've just been talking about survey work as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as we finish up?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Not sure where that's come from. I guess it would be fair to say that I'm quite new. The role is relatively new. It didn't exist in the previous quinquennium. So I think the role is evolving. What I'm really bringing to it is really quite a commitment to promoting research, radiotherapy research in Wales. I'm picking up what's been said a lot already about the multidisciplinary nature of that, getting the next generation on board. I know there's a question about undergraduate and postgraduate involvement in research in one of the questions as well. So I think one of the ways that I hope to look at how we go forward is by surveying really staff groups involved in radiotherapy delivery in the 3 Welsh cancer centres, trying to identify the barriers to getting involved in research, but also just getting a feel of what people's impression, their attitude to research is, how important they see it, how they see it fitting in their, does the cancer centre they work in have a strategy for research, are they aware of it, you know, all of those kind of detail. Really, in that, with the idea of hopefully going to pick out some areas that, as WCRC, hopefully we can look to address over the next 5 years, if there are, and I certainly think a lot of that will overlap with what Richard's work to the wider cancer community about some of the barriers, and we've already touched on a few of those today.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. Anything else anyone wants to add in the last 2 minutes before we head into a wrap up? Everyone has said everything they could possibly want to say about the next 5 years at the WCRC. Wonderful, thank you all the panelists for a wonderful discussion. Like we said, we'll try our best to get this video up online, either on our website or on YouTube, or maybe both, once this is finished. We had from John Stafford, we had just a shout out for rcbcwales.org.uk as a potential place you might want to go and have a look at. Research Capacity Building Collaboration Wales, rcbcwales.org.uk to head over and have a look at. Wonderful. So the next quinquennial is rolling about. 2015, Wales Cancer Research Centre started, which was approximately 2,000 years ago, or what it feels like. So we're going to head over to John Chester to give us an update on a strategy update for the next 5 years and what we can expect. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Just to get myself set up screen-wise, should be up with you in just a moment.
I'm enjoying watching the aurora going off behind you, if I'm honest.
Ah, yes.
It's a great. As an astronomer, I appreciate you thinking about me.
It's much better than the view that you would see if it weren't there, and that's it's laughably called a study in our house, which is just the junk room with a bit of the junk thrown out. Here we go. Press the right buttons, and we're away.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Over to you.
So some of you will have heard of the Cancer Research Strategy for Wales, otherwise known as CREST Cymru already, and several people on this call have already contributed mightily to it. But some of you it will be new to you. So apologies to those who know more about it than others. If I go right back to basics. I preface what I say here by I'm so pleased that the word collaboration has come up so many times. These slides were prepared in advance, of course, and I keep using the word partnership. It's a word we've held dear for a long time, and I think partnership is key. I think that the nicest comments that I get about WCRC are when people say, as they have done plenty of times to me, oh, the thing that WCRC has done is bring people together. And I think that's great. We need to bring people together within Wales, and we also need to work with those outside Wales. It's all about partnership. Oddly enough, here's my first slide, the Wales Cancer Partnership. So the Wales Cancer Partnership is something that's sort of happened a little bit in the background. It's not something we can put on the metrics very easily, but it's something that we believed in. And I've got to give a shout out to Libby Batt here, our former operations director, who was a major lead in this. And what we've done is say we need to go beyond simply WCRC. WCRC can do a lot, but it can't do everything. We're simply not funded to do all of cancer research. So what the Wales Cancer Partnership aims to do is to improve communication, information and collaboration in cancer research. And you may say, why am I talking about this when I'm supposed to be talking about the All Wales Cancer Strategy? Well, the All Wales Cancer Strategy is, in a way, an evolution of this principle. So just a moment or two, if you don't mind, about what the Wales Cancer Partnership is and what the strategy will build upon. Here is the funding structure of cancer research in in Wales and elsewhere. A lot of money comes from public funding, either from the research councils that are nowadays within what's called UKRI and by a Welsh government, but there's also the commercial and so-called third sector. For those who are not familiar with third sector, more or less equates to charities, which, as I mentioned earlier, is really important. We also need to think hard about primary care. A lot of what we think about is done in hospitals, but we've had mention of social care quite rightly already, and we have very talented clinicians out in community medicine whom we need to draw in too. So the universities are, of course, hotbeds of research, and we have 3 on board. The NHS, the R&D is very deliberately set up to have ideally a research culture within the NHS. So what WCRC has tried to do is bring those bodies together, bring the NHS and universities, but as this little red dotted lozenge, which I hope is on your screen, shows, that's far from everything. So what we need to do is we need to go beyond WCRC, and that's what WCP aims to do, and it aims to bring in all public funders and the commercial and third sectors too. And not to forget about primary care, as I hope I emphasised a moment ago. So this is what WCP currently is, a large variety of partners with the logos down the left-hand side there, including, excuse me, several of the Welsh charities I mentioned earlier, as well as a couple of commercial partners in there, as well as our universities and the NHS. What Crest Cymru does, the Cancer Research Strategy for Wales, is aim to go one step beyond. There were 3 major drivers for this. The most important one was probably the Cancer Delivery Plan for Wales, coming from the Wales Cancer Network. This was a refresh back in 2016, which seems like ancient history now, and mandated that there should be a strategy of this sort. We've tried to meet that mandate. The second is a very influential document from the major UK charity, Cancer Research UK, funding cancer research, about building collaboration. There's that collaboration word, literally in black and white. And the third influential document came from the Academy of Medical Sciences, which is the clinicians who conduct high quality research, whether that be in the NHS or in universities. And this document is absolutely fantastic at making the case for one of those really good questions that came up earlier about getting the NHS and academics working together. I didn't want to chip in then, but I knew this was going to come up. So what has been our response to that, those drivers, those important documents, and the other good reasons for wanting a strategy? We brought together a new partnership, which is ourselves, the WCRC, Wales Cancer Network, in many ways representing the NHS in Wales in research, and the Wales Cancer Alliance, which is a collection of the major third sector funders. And together we've worked on putting together a strategy, which is I'm glad to say, coming very close to fruition. What is this strategy for? Well, it's intended for a variety of purposes, but for me, the most important one is a unifying force. So again, we've got that collaboration partnership thing by no accident at the top. We should be sharing a vision of what we want to do together. We should share our ambitions, and we should work together on the priorities. So it is a blueprint for partnerships. You know, I promise I didn't rewrite these slides during the discussion. They were already there. I think it should also act as both an internal and an external point of reference. It needs to be for our research community to remind us what we're doing and what we do best. And it's also for our funders and collaborators to show them why they should invest in us and work with us. And above all, and I very deliberately put this as the bottom line, it needs to be for all those affected by cancer. It needs to provide benefits for them, whether they be patients, families, carers, or the community in whom we want to prevent and detect cancer earlier. So what we're aiming to do in the strategy is develop our strength. This is very deliberately a rather back of the envelope diagram on the left, and a slightly more IT savvy version on the right. I never failed to take an opportunity to make Malcolm Mason blush. So that diagram on the left comes from Malcolm, and we very deliberately not changed that diagram because it so much says it all. We've got big strengths in multiple areas, but some bigger than others in terms of critical mass. And what we want to do is we want to grow all three of those areas, but proportionately, we need to increase our population science, within which I would include social science and health services research, which is sometimes called implementation science. In other words, getting the early stages of research through to benefit patients in the NHS. So within the strategy, oh, and by the way, forgive me, although the document is nearly finished, it needs to be shared with the partners who've helped put it together, and it needs to be signed off. So I'm not going to give you details if that's all right, though I could have done. It just seems rather discourteous at this stage. So what we have is a very clear vision and some very clear ambitions, and some equally clear priorities about where we should put the effort. It's coming to you soon, so please bear with us on the details, but I can promise you that we've addressed that really very carefully. And that's underpinned by the national advantages and assets. It was great to hear in the USP questions earlier, people talking about the population of Wales and the NHS in Wales as things that genuinely are unique to Wales, as being things we should work with and for in achieving things. Also, something about guiding values, I think it's really important. And when you see the document coming out, hopefully in November, you will see that that partnership, collaboration, and growth are very much amongst our values. So this is a little timeline. I won't dwell long on this. The main point about this slide is this is work that's gone back 2 years. We aim to get it done in about 18 months, and we've slipped almost a year in that. Not too bashful about that, A, because important things take time, but also because, as you can see, third from the bottom there, we've had a very large chunk of a year disappear to COVID-19 and the recovery process after that. But we've come through the formation of a strategic oversight board and a writing group. We've done multiple rounds of drafting. We've taken it out at meetings in Wrexham and Aberystwyth and Bangor and lots of places that I can't remember now. And we had a 3-month public consultation period. Just recently, as we've recovered from COVID, we've started getting together again to refine the document with the help of a medical writing company who worked very hard to help us, called Hard Truths. And I hope that by the end of the year, certainly, and preferably in November, we'll have a document to share with you. I can give you some sneak peeks. As I say, it would be wrong for me to share details, I think inappropriate, but I'm pretty sure that these things are going to be signed off and they're rather general. You'll be seeing things that emphasize what you've seen earlier in our own WCRC research emphasis. In other words, improving the outcomes as well as the experience, that qualitative research that we do so very well. Going to see something about tackling inequalities, as Kate Brain and Sunil Dalwani and their excellent colleagues would tell us. It's one thing having good ways of preventing things and good ways of detecting things early, but you've got to reach the people who are at risk, and you've got to address health and socio-economic inequalities in order to hit some of the people whom one can help most. It was mentioned earlier, and I was really pleased to hear it. We need a culture that research is for everyone. We're very good at PPI&E. We've justifiably won praise. Julie Hepburn and her lay partners have picked up the gauntlet, which was thrown down by Jim Fitzgibbon and others, to make sure that we have the public and patients fully involved in what we do from the start of research to the finish. And a key element of that is that patients and the public should feel participants in research, not just the subjects of research. We should be doing research with people, not on them. Getting short of time, so I'll pick up the pace a little. We need to strengthen and sustain our research community. That was the circles diagram I just showed you now. The Academy of Medical Sciences document I mentioned earlier picks up on the excellent point in the questions about working together with the senior NHS academic folk and universities. Again, that word collaborations was on my slide in advance. We need to broaden the funding base, which I've already mentioned. And something I'll come back to in just a minute in one of my final slides, a centre of excellence for Wales that people will look at and admire. So an important thing to say in tailing off this discussion of CREST, this is just a first step. The document that will be coming out soon is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. We've got to do something with it. And once you've got a document to work together on, the fun is actually making it happen. So much of our emphasis is going to go on implementation. I was discussing with the chair of the Oversight Board earlier this week, Ian Lewis, about this. We're both enormously looking forward to getting stuck into the implementation. And then finally, amongst the many things Libby Batt has taught me, what does success look like is always an important question. So what I did was I found this. If you look down in the bottom corner, I put this slide together back in November 2014 when we were putting together the plans for WCRC, and I put this slide up, and don't bother trying to read it, but this is about the Manchester Cancer Research Centre, a fantastic building that is opposite the Christie Hospital and the Patterson Laboratories. It's a collaboration between the university, the NHS, and the major charity, namely Cancer Research UK. And they have this lovely slogan, driving cancer through team science. And you know, that word team, we've got collaboration, partnership. This is what we should be aiming for in Wales. We've got as equivalent populations, a degree of devolution, depending on how you regard that word. There is a mayor of Manchester, etc., etc. These are the people with whom we should be competing in the nicest sense and collaborating with very strongly as amongst the best. So definitely tying up now, I believe that moving into the implementation phase, having a vision for what success looks like, that we can make Wales Cancer Partnership a vehicle for doing that. Very important to acknowledge, as with all these things, that people make things happen. These are some of the key people who have made the strategy come towards fruition. I won't go through them individually, if that's all right. Wonderful though they all are, there's not much time. Similarly, these two key bodies, the crew group and the SOB, that have made this happen. I've got slides with names on. You'll forgive me if I skim quickly over them without giving anybody the chance to fully read them. That's the crew group and that's the SOB. The point of putting this up is not about the individuals, it's about the collaboration and the teamwork that has brought this together. So on behalf of the responsible individuals for the three structures that have come together to produce the CREST strategy, Tom for the Wales Cancer Network, myself in WCRC, and Richard Pugh and colleagues in the Wales Cancer Alliance, I'd like to say a big thank you to all those people who've put it together, and I hope you'll all be looking forward to seeing that coming your way this side of the new year.
Thanks so much for that, John. And I won't be the only person to say what a wonderful portrait picture of you that was on your last slide. Very dashing, of course.
I'm not sure there are any wonderful portraits of me, but thank you.
So within the chat, I promised Nicola that I would mention her note, which was just about the RCBC. Oh, I've lost my chat again. Which is rcbcwales.org.uk. And she said that RCBC Wales funds research for nursing and AHPs. Current call for first into research closes next week. So current call for first into research closes next week. I just thought that was important to share with you. So it's left for me to wrap up, really. I feel like I should tap some paper on the desk and wrap up. What a wonderful panel we've had today. Great questions from everyone. So I'd very much like to thank all our panelists. I'm going to pop you into gallery view on mine. And if you want to do that on yours as well, and give them all a nice quiet round of applause. Thank you so much to all the panelists for a wonderful discussion. I should also mention one of them that you'll see on your gallery view as well that hasn't really said much because she's been behind the scenes for everything. Jodie Bond from the comms team, who's done wonderful work, and we've been back and forth setting this up over the last couple of weeks. And it might seem that when they do go well, it seems like not a lot of effort's gone into it, but they only go well if a lot of effort's gone into it.
Can I just say a big thank you to you as well, Hugh?
Oh, thank you very much, Jodie.
Wonderfully presented, thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got 4 minutes before we go overtime, so only say that once we don't go overtime. Otherwise, I won't have done my job properly. No, but thank you, Jodie, and the comms team. Like we've said so much during this last 2.5 hours, comms is really, really important, and the work that they do on the comms team is wonderful. and the attendees as well. Currently on 43 attendees. We started with over 60, I think. There's a lot there, so people jumping on and off throughout the entire session. Those of you who are still here, if you want to pass this on, this will be up on the website, the video, and on YouTube, I'm sure, to pass on to colleagues and friends. You know, weekend tomorrow, if you want to start off your weekend by watching this or re-watching Saturday night, 2.5 hours. That's less than a Marvel film right there. So thank you very much for attending. If for whatever reason you want to see more about me, hughjames.com is where I'm at. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but if you want to know more, and then if you want to give us feedback on how it's gone, I'm going to share this one last Mentimeter with you, which is all about general feedback. So menti.com again, 8767157. I know that off the top of my head now. Give us feedback on the next 5 years. What would you like to see? If you want to talk about this panel discussion in general, and what you'd like to see from the next one, what can we do better next time? If you want to just say some nice words, then we'll go into the weekend happy. So you can leave us feedback on there. And if you want to get to, I'll leave that up and it'll be on your phones. So it won't go away. So you can keep asking, keep giving that feedback. If you do want to ask any more questions, any more discussion to be had, go to email wcrc@cardiff.ac.uk, wcrc@cardiff.ac.uk. Also on social media at the WCRC, from a hashtag WCRC 5 years. So thank you to the panelists, thank you to the attendees, thank you comms team, and thank you to the wonderful Welsh Ice for hosting me. And we'll see you in 5 years by the looks. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Hugh. Thanks, everybody.